Welcome back. Let's now learn all about the event loop, which is the heart of the Node.js architecture. And this is probably the most important lecture in this section, so make sure you really understand everything that I show you during this video. So let's get started. So here's a diagram similar to the last lecture, so that we know exactly what we're talking about here. So we're still in a node process in a single thread where the event loop runs, alright? Now, the first thing that you need to know is that the event loop is where all the application code that is inside callback functions is executed. So basically all code that is not top-level code will run in the event loop. Some parts might get offloaded to the thread pool as we saw in the last lecture, but it's the event loop that takes care of all this. As I said before, it really is the heart of the node architecture. Okay. Now, as I mentioned many times in the first part of the course, Node.js is all built around callback functions. So, functions that are called as soon as some work is finished, sometime in the future. Remember that? And it works this way because Node uses an event-driven architecture, which is something that we're going to talk about in one of the next videos. But what you need to know for now is that things like our application receiving an HTTP request on our server, or a timer expiring, or a file finishing to read, all these will emit events as soon as they are done with their work. And our event loop will then pick up these events and call the callback functions that are associated with each event. Okay, makes sense? So again, the event loop receives events each time something important happens, and will then call the necessary callbacks such as we define in our code. So in summary, it's usually said that the event loop does the orchestration, which simply means that it receives events, calls their callback functions, and offloads the more expensive tasks to the thread pool. Now, how does all this actually work behind the scene? In what order are these callbacks executed? Well, that is what we're going to find out next. So remember, when we start our node application, the event loop starts running right away. Now the event loop has multiple phases, and each phase has a callback queue, which are the callbacks coming from the events that the event loop receives, just as we talked about in the last slide. Now in some places you will read that there is only one callback queue or one event queue, but in fact, as I said, the event loop has many phases, where each phase has its own callback queue. So let's now take a look at the four most important phases. There are one or two other phases that are used internally by Node, but these are not that important and I'm not going to talk about them. So the first phase takes care of callbacks of expired timers, for example, from the setTimeout function. So if there are callback functions from timers that just expired, these are the first ones to be processed by the event loop. If a timer expires later, during the time when one of the other phases are being processed, well, then the callback of that timer will only be called as soon as the event loop comes back to this first phase. Make sense? And it works like this in all four phases. So callbacks in each queue are processed one by one until there are no ones left in the queue, and only then the event loop will enter the next phase. Next up, we have I/O polling and execution of I/O callbacks. And again, remember that I/O stands for input-output. So polling basically means looking for new I/O events that are ready to be processed and putting them into the callback queue. And remember that in the context of a node application, I/O means mainly stuff like networking and file access. And so it's in this phase where probably 99% of our code gets executed, simply because in a typical node app, the bulk of what we need to do is related to networking and also file accessing. The next phase is for setImmediate callbacks. And setImmediate is a special kind of timer that we can use if we want to process callbacks immediately after the I/O polling and execution phase, which can be important in some more advanced use cases. Alright, and finally, the fourth phase is for close callbacks, which are, again, not that important for us, but I put this here anyway for the sake of completeness. Basically, in this phase, all close events are processed, for example, for when a web server or a WebSocket shut down. So these are the 4 phases in the event loop, but besides these 4 callback queues that we just saw, there are actually also 2 other queues. The next tick queue and the other microtasks queue, which is mainly for resolved promises. If you're not familiar with promises, we will talk about them a bit in a later section. Anyway, if there are any callbacks in one of these 2 queues to be processed, they will be executed right after the current phase of the event loop finishes, instead of waiting for the entire loop to finish. Okay? So in other words, after each of these 4 phases, if there are any callbacks in these 2 special queues, they will be executed right away. Now, for example, imagine that a promise resolves and returns some data from an API call, while the callback of an expired timer is running. So in this case, the promise callback will be executed right after the one from the timer finishes. Okay? And the same logic also applies to the next tick queue, which we didn't talk about yet. So basically, process.nextTick is a function that we can use when we really need to execute a certain callback right after the current event loop phase. It's a bit similar to setImmediate, with the difference that setImmediate only runs after the IO callback phase. What is similar though is that both are for really advanced use cases, and we're probably not even going to need them throughout this course. But anyway, I wanted to include these more complex stuff here as well, so that you have the tools that you need if you really need to dig deep into Node.js if you want to. Alright, and with that, we actually finished one tick of the event loop. And the tick is basically just one cycle in this loop. So now it's time to decide whether the loop should continue to the next tick or if the program should exit. And how does Node do that? Well, it's very simple. Node simply checks whether there are any timers or I/O tasks that are still running in the background. And if there aren't any, then it will exit the application. But if there are any pending timers or I/O tasks, well, then it will continue running the event loop and go straight to the next tick. So for example, when we're listening for incoming HTTP requests, like we did in our Node farm project in the previous section, we're basically running an I/O task. And that is why the event loop, and therefore Node.js, keep running and keep listening for new HTTP requests coming in, instead of just exiting the application. Also, when we're writing or reading a file in the background, that's also an I/O task. And so it makes sense that the app doesn't exit while it's working with that file, alright? Okay, and this is basically what you should know about the Node.js event loop. If you need even more detail than this, well, you can always try to read the official Node documentation, which should be quite easy for you to understand at this point, now that you already understand most of the event loop anyway. And I just want to emphasize that it's really important for you to correctly understand the event loop, so that you can write your own performant code and also debug your own code when something goes wrong in an unexpected way. And now just to finish, let's review some of the stuff we talked about here. So in a nutshell, the most important thing that I want you to understand from this lecture, and maybe from this entire course, is that the event loop is what makes asynchronous programming possible in Node.js, making it the most important feature in Node's design and making Node.js completely different from other platforms. It takes care of all incoming events and performs orchestration by offloading heavier tasks into the thread pool and doing the more simple work itself. Also, remember that we need the event loop because in Node.js everything works in one single thread, and so you can have thousands or millions of users accessing the same thread at the same time. This makes Node so lightweight and scalable, but at the same time, it comes with the danger of blocking our single thread, which would make the entire app slow or even stop for all your users accessing the app, right? Now in other languages, like PHP running on an Apache server, basically a new thread is created for each new user, which is way more resource intensive, but on the other hand, there is no danger of blocking, right? So that whole model makes it a bit easier to use PHP for beginners, but of course, it comes with its own disadvantages, which I'm not going to go into at this point. Anyway, let me again remind you that it's your responsibility to not block the event loop. And so here's a couple of guidelines for that. First off, don't use the sync versions of functions in the fs, crypto, or zlib modules in your callback functions, okay? So in our first project, we actually did use the synchronous version, but it was in the top level code, so outside of any callback. And since that code runs before the event loop even starts, well, it's no problem to use the synchronous version there. Also, and this is probably pretty obvious, don't perform very complex calculations in the event loop. So stuff like crunching millions of numbers in loops inside of loops, or something like that. Next, be careful with JSON in very large objects, because at some point it can start to take a long time to parse or to stringify JSON. And finally, don't use all too complex regular expressions, for example with multiple nested quantifiers or back references, because again, they can take longer than expected. And these are of course just a couple of high-level guidelines, but they will get you started on the right path. Now there are some potential solutions to these blocking problems, like manually offloading to the thread pool or using child processes. And we might talk about this by the end of the course or sometime in the future. But for now, it's important that you understand and follow this advice of really not blocking the event loop. Alright? Next up, I'm going to give you a small example to show you some of the stuff that we talked about in practice.